The Wonder Woman sword is back. I mean, I've been using it as a prop for the Attack on Titan videos, and I used it in the Mulan video, but right now I'm actually going to talk about Wonder Woman. Okay, so yesterday or last time, my dad and I watched the Wonder Woman 1984 movie that they had that came out in 2020, a year ago and everything during quarantine or so, or last year during quarantine and everything. And I mean, like I'd seen the previews for it, and I'd wanted to see it anyway. I saw the original one that the DC, expanded cinematic universe, whatever you want to call it, did, and I very much loved the live action Wonder Woman one that they did. I think Gal Gadot does a perfect job as Wonder Woman. She's awesome. Um, and of course, I'm extremely familiar with Wonder Woman, from the comics to a degree, and my dad's familiar with Wonder Woman because he of course saw the Linda Carter Wonder Woman series, which of course I know that Linda Carter pops up in this. Um, for reference, going into the movie, I knew that it took place in 1984, because that's the title of the movie. So I knew it was a much more modern version of the film, or a much more modern setting that Wonder Woman was in. Not 100% modern because it's not happening today, but it's much more modern of a setting than where she was back, in 14, 1919, whatever the year was for the original Wonder Woman movie. Um, and for when she actually used this sword, as opposed to this one where she just has her, her lasso of truth. Um, and so I wasn't extremely familiar with like what they were gonna do for like the bad guy for the movie. I knew that like Steve Trevor came back, and I was like, okay, well let's see how they do this. And I'm like, well, it's not just gonna be that like, oh, someone else was born that looked exactly like him, and came along and Diana found him. No. Um, that would not have been the case. So I hadn't really done too much research into going into the movie and like, who's in it beyond, Gal Gadot and such. I had seen like pieces that had popped up online, where they're showing, oh, they're in a plane at one point, and Steve Trevor comes back, and here's pictures that they did of like actors from the original movie that came back to just reprise their role for like a photo with makeup on to make them look older, to still show that she still stayed in their lives and such. So I wasn't extremely familiar. I honestly didn't even know when I started watching the movie, I didn't even know that like Cheetah was going to be one of the villains for the movie. I am aware that Cheetah is a very huge, very big Wonder Woman, villain and such. I mean, like I've read a lot of the New 52 comics, and I know that Cheetah's been in those quite a bit. I've seen a couple of the DC animated movies that they've done over the past several years. That where I definitely confirm that Marvel definitely has the cinematic universe down. In regards to live action, I would definitely say DC has a much better handle on the animated movies in regards to that. Um, because I've seen a lot of the animated ones that have come out within the past 10 years or so, and even going a little further back than that. Not that Marvel has bad animated movies in regards to that, but I would say that DC has a little bit better of a corner on that market, because they've done a few different Wonder Woman movies, and they've done various Superman and Batman related movies. I broke out one of my Justice League shirts. I think I can name everybody on this. Um, and such. So it's just kind of, so going into the movie, I wasn't, oh well, we're gonna deal with Cheetah in this, and we're gonna deal with that, and then there's gonna be this other guy and everything, and I'm just like, so I was going into it not 100% blind, but a little bit more. Okay, well, let's see what happens with this. Okay, so the beginning of the movie is another flashback to when Diana is a young girl growing up on Themyscira with her mother and her aunt. Of course, his mother is Queen Hippolyta, and her aunt is Antiope, played wonderfully by Robin Wright. Gotta love her. It's like Princess Buttercup grew up and got even more awesome. Yes. Um, yes, I've seen the memes about like her and print like that, like the year that Wonder Woman came out was also I think the year that Star Wars I think it was Star Wars: The Force Awakens came out, or something along those lines, was in that same time frame, and it's just like the year when our childhood princesses became generals. Yes, um, with Princess Leia and everything. Um, and so we go into that and we get like this kind of there's a tournament going on Themyscira for the Amazons, and Diana takes part in the tournament as a young child. She's probably like maybe 10-ish, 7 to 10 range or so. She's still quite young. And of course, she's the only child on Themyscira because, or at least in this depiction of Themyscira, she's the only child. I know in other depictions of Themyscira over the years in the comics that there have been other children, other daughters, but she's the one that's just in this continuity. And she is, of course, she tries to take part in the race, and she misses one of the checkpoints in the race, and therefore her aunt grabs her right at the end, right when she's about to supposedly win the race, and she's like, "No, you cheated. You did not do the right route. You cheated. Therefore, you cannot be the one that wins." Trying, you can't take the shortcut out, which is kind of, that. And then we jump to, 1984 in in Washington, D.C. Some of this movie takes place in the Smithsonian, but our opening set piece in DC is this giant mall that is like 100% set in the 80s, and it's great. And I actually just went to the mall yesterday as well, right? I took my niece to the mall to buy her a birthday present, to get her a birthday present because she just turned 13, so being the good aunt. And we did that. So I was just at the mall. Admittedly, this mall looks a lot cooler than the one that we have here. No dissing. I'm nothing against the mall we have here, but the old one, the one that they had in this, was awesome. And of course, in like some of the bonus features, they talk about, they had to like recreate like 30 or 60 some stores in this mall. And of course, there's this heist that goes on from this jewelry store that they're actually stealing artifacts. And then, of course, Diana, Wonder Woman shows up and she stops all of this. She's, swinging through the mall on her lasso and everything, and stopping the bad guys and saving small children from dying. And, so she does that. And then, of course, we have it where she, of course, goes to work at the Smithsonian, because she is, of course, that's where she went to work. She, we kind of see a little bit of her apartment where we see, she had visited, she'd stayed in touch with the rest of the guys that she had helped save back in World War I, and with the lady that had kind of helped, Steve Trevor, of course, back then, that was kind of his assistant and everything, Etta Candy. And we show that she kept in contact with them, which is, very nice. And of course, Diana is, being from Themyscira, she can kind of translate and read any language, because, there's, the root languages and such that she's, of course, studied. And she's also, a child of history. So, of course, she knows all this history. And she goes, she works at the Smithsonian Institute. And we, of course, are then introduced to the character Barbara and Minerva. And of course, it took me longer than it should have to figure out Cheetah. And my dad's like, "You didn't catch that?" And I'm like, "Shut up." It's been a little while, and I was like, I couldn't remember what Cheetah's actual name was. And the movies, the animated ones that I've seen her in, she's just usually referred to as Cheetah. But of course, we have Cheetah, played by Kristen Wiig. I'll go over the cast list at the end, of course. But we have her there, and she's a geologist and a cryptozoologist. And so she's this extremely smart person, but she's very awkward and shy and everything. And her and Diana meet, and then she has to go and look at these artifacts, and Diana ends up seeing these artifacts that she's looking over, trying to identify for the FBI, and they find this weird kind of crystal. And yes, let's start messing with the odd crystal. That's a wonderful thing to do when you're a, Greek island mythological demigod superhero princess that's kind of immortal. Yes, let's mess with the weird rock that they don't know what it is. And Diana's holding the rock, and she's, her and Minerva are kind of joking back and forth, and she ends up, Diana kind of makes a wish type of a thing. And of course, her wish is to have Steve back, Steve Trevor. And, she wishes for that. And then, her and Minerva kind of connect, and they go to lunch, and they're, just kind of, talking and having fun. And, you know, it's just this, we get this little bit of a bonding moment. And I do think in the past, in like, cause, I'm not 100% sure if in the actual comics at some point, well, I'm pretty sure at some point in the comics, Cheetah origin story, can result in her and Diana kind of being friends in the beginning. And then it kind of shifts, of course. And I think that, just like with most DC villains and DC superheroes, at some point, I'm pretty sure they've had to, team up for whatever reason. Minerva needs help, Cheetah needs help saving someone that she cares about, and Wonder Woman's the only one that can help her, or Wonder Woman needs to have Cheetah help her for whatever reason. And then, of course, you know, Diana, they end up meeting this, billionaire, millionaire guy, who's, he's in charge of this oil company, and his name is Maxwell Lorenz, Lorenzano, or Max Lord. Um, and he is a businessman who is trying to, he wants to find this stone that, happens to be at the Smithsonian. So he's trying to kind of, he's like, oh, well, I'm going to be donating things. So it's okay if I can come in and look around and everything. And he's very interested in the stone, and he's been trying to find the stone. He's in charge of this oil company that's called Black Gold, which of course oil is, referred to as black gold a lot of the times, in, nomenclature, because it's extremely valuable, and, it's kind of worth its weight in gold. So, particularly at that time. And of course, we find out that he's actually, that it's actually kind of a failed business venture. That he had, he has all this, luxury and everything that he's kind of portraying to the world, but that's not exactly how it's working. And actually, none of the wells have oil in them, and it's kind of a Ponzi scheme. And he's actually very desperate to try to find, find this stone that happens to be at the Smithsonian, and he knows that it's there. And what ends up happening is, we also find out that he has a son, Alistair, who is, it's his son from him and his ex, and he does love his son very, very much, but he wants to. I can see where this is coming from in regards to Max Lord, because he wants to give his son a better life than he had. And we kind of learn a little bit more about his backstory, near kind of toward the end of the movie and such, when he's the one of the big villains, of course, in the movie, him and Cheetah. But so he's dealing with the fact of, his company is going under, and he needs to find this stone, and he knows where it is now he just has to get to it. And they have this big party that night, this big, gala, kind of like it's not like the Met Gala where there's like fashion icons and celebrities everywhere. It's lots of investors in the Met, in the Smithsonian and such like that. And Diana doesn't normally go, but she went because she's kind of concerned about Barbara. And Barbara and Minerva have kind of, Barbara and Diana have kind of become friends at this point in time. And Minerva had actually made, or I'm going to go back and forth between Barbara and Minerva. Although whenever I say Minerva, I keep wanting to think of, Minerva McGonagall from Harry Potter, but that's a very different thing. Still have weird magic wishing stones in Harry Potter, but not the same thing in this case. And what happens is, Barbara had made a wish to be more like Diana. And so she's getting slightly more confident in herself, slightly better, better coordinated, because she's less and less clumsy. She's getting stronger. And what ends up happening is, Barbara and Diana, they talk a little bit at the gala, and then Barbara ends up, talking with Max Lord, and Max Lord kind of, gets her to take him to her office. And of course, he wants to use the crystal in order to make he wants to make a wish and everything. And he kind of convinces her to let him take it with him. And then, he'll bring it back. And he's like, well, I have this friend that can, read this stuff. And he can, I can have him look at it. And then he can, and then I'll bring it back and he can tell you what it said. And, Barbara kind of falls for this and everything. She's also kind of, he's very charming and everything, charismatic, and, she's not used to having all this attention flattered at her and, put in her direction and everything. So she's a little bit flustered by it. And while at the gala, this guy walks up to Diana and he starts talking to her, and she's like, no, I have no idea who you are. And then he says something, and I don't remember what the exact line is, but it's like one of the things that Steve had said. And then of course we get the camera turning around and, spinning around them or whatever the case is. And it shifts, and the guy morphs into Steve Trevor, who is, of course, Diana's long lost love, who was lost, redundant, that, she lost back in toward the end of the original movie and such, because, he flew a plane into the sky full of bombs and blew it up. Yes, I'm a huge Marvel fan, and I'm aware of the fact of how similar that is to how, Steve Rogers kind of goes out at the end of the first Captain America movie. I'm aware of this. Just don't be a guy named Steve in either World War I or World War II in a comic book, and you'll be fine. Don't be a guy named Bucky either. But what ends up happening is Diana's like, how are you back? How are you even alive? Type thing. And like he's explaining, well, I woke up, and like they go out and they walk, and like they're just like catching up, and he's just like amazed by this modern world. And they go back to the apartment that that is kind of his apartment. And she sees the phone book out, and she's like, you found me in the phone book. And he's like, good old reliable phone book. It's like future proof or whatever the case is. I'm like, well, nowadays you can always just Google someone or try to find them on Facebook, and then you can probably find them. But what ends up happening, or, just look up on YouTube and see if they decided to make a YouTube channel. But yeah. And what ends up happening is, they of course they have, like this night of passion. Yes. Of course, wake up the next morning, and Diana is just trying to figure out, how it is that she has him back. And I mean, I don't blame her for being happy about it. I mean, she's spent the last, 65 to 70 years, she's, probably a fair amount of the people that had been her friends back with Steve, that were part of the Steve's, group and Candy and everything, that they're kind of probably dead at this point in time, or at the very least very, very old, to the point where either they can't travel anymore, or, or something else could have happened. They may have died at some point, or, not like died like of old age, but like, there's been a lot of wars between now and then, and, they could have, been in those. Or other things happen in that time frame, and they could have died in that time frame, or go down the other path of, some of them could have Alzheimer's or dementia. We don't know, but we'll move past that. And Diana is just she's enjoying having Steve back and everything, and she's like, but we have to figure out how you're back. As much as I would love to just stay here in this, stay here with you forever, we have to find out how you're back. What did this? And she's like, I'm pretty sure I have a good idea about what it was. And, they go, she's like, well, she tells him about this stone. And then, of course, she's, showing him around. And we get the moment where they're still in the guy's apartment. And it's literally Chris Pine just, like, having fun with, like, 80s fashion. And we get, like, this fashion show moment where he's trying on all these different outfits. And it's just like, no, we can keep the shoes. No, why are you in a fanny pack? And then he talks about like parachute pants, and it was funny. It's just a funny scene, just like a moment of levity in this moment, because it's like all this stuff that he's not familiar with and everything, and it's just him having fun. And of course they come up with, at least some decent outfit for him to wear out. And what ends up happening is, she's showing him, she shows him the subway, there's all this weird modern art, and, he's just like trying to figure it out. And, then they get to the museum and they see that Barbara is getting more and more confident, which, I mean, like, Wonder Woman and, Diana necessarily in this case is okay with the fact of, she's becoming more confident, more comfortable in her own skin. Diana doesn't have anything against that. She's just not 100% sure, like, what happened. She's also kind of just not noticing it because she already thought that, Barbara was a nice person. And what ends up happening is, of course, and she's like, well, we need to see that stone. And they're like, well, I gave it to Max Lord. Why? And they're like, okay, well, I need you to find out as much information about that stone as you can. And then I'm going to need, and then I'll get in contact with you and then you can tell me about the information. And, Diana is making her way to Max Lord's, his business, the Black Gold headquarters. And we see that he has made a wish on the wishing stone to become the wishing stone. And in doing so, he then gains the ability to grant people their wishes, but he takes something from them in the process. And like, he's like, he start getting all these employees in because, he wishes for, stuff to work better. He finds the right people to make the right wishes and everything. And, then he takes something valuable from them. This guy that was an investor, he's like, well, make your wish about the company. And so the investor's like, well, of course I wish for the company to be successful. And then he's like, okay, good. That'll happen. And now I'm going to take all of your shares and profits and everything else that you would have had, and now it's going to be mine. And he's just going bigger and bigger and bigger, and he's working his way through, getting all these different wishes from people and everything from his employees, and he has his son, and his son just wants to be with him. His son just wants his father to spend time with him. And, Max Lord is unfortunately, he's going down the path of, I need all of this, instead of being a father. And we find out that the dream stone is what it's called, that the dream stone takes your most prized possession in order to grant your wish. And in doing so, for Diana, she got Steve. We haven't quite figured out what it's cost her yet. And for Barbara, it's it's starting to give her more confidence, more poise, making her stronger. We see at one point she goes to try to do, she goes to a gym, and at one point she just lifts this giant barbell, covered in weights above her head like it's nothing, with all these guys behind her that are like bodybuilders, or what the frick is going on over there. And so she's getting stronger and stronger, and we see all this stuff, but she's also becoming colder. She's becoming more self-obsessed, self-absorbed. She's still very smart. She still has her intelligence. And one of the dichotomies that we see, this is in the beginning of the movie, we see her, she brought food to this homeless guy. And then she ends up, just telling, once she asked her, after she makes her wish and everything, she ends up telling the guy, just buzz off, leave me alone, it's none of your business, that type of a thing. And she's, very, very rude and mean to him and everything, as opposed to this guy that it seemed to be kind of her friend earlier in the movie. And, there's this chaos that just keeps breaking out in different areas, and Diana and Steve get to, Max Lord's headquarters, and, they make their way into the office, and, they find that he's been researching this dreamstone for years, and then she finds this ring that had been around the dreamstone, and she sees the inside of it and the language written in it, and she's like, that's the language of the gods, that's not good. And later in the movie, she makes a comparison to the monkey's paw, and of course the monkey's paw in legend is, there's this crinkled old monkey's paw that, you get a wish for every finger, and then once it counts down, you lose you have your last wish. And then when someone else picks it up that hasn't made any wishes on it yet, it gets all the wishes back. And of course, the thing with the monkey's paw is that every time you make a wish, even if you're extremely specific with the wish, it will still cost you something. A good example of that is, remember back in school, when you're in high school or whatever, and you have the textbooks. I don't remember if this was high school or middle school, but you have the textbooks, and of course you have to read this story in this textbook, and at least they kind of made some of the stories a little interesting. It's okay, at least make it kind of interesting. And read this story, and then you have to, plot out, where's the climax, where's the outcome, where's that type of stuff. At least if the story is interesting, or at least I found some of them interesting, that at least helps it to make it a little more, a little easier to read. And one of the stories was about the monkey's paw. It's this couple and their son, and they got this monkey's paw, and like, the son made a wish, and then, like the father made a wish, and, you know, one of the wishes had resulted in, unfortunately, the son dying at work, and it was like a horrible, gruesome death. And, then the wife, made a wish to have their son back. And it's not like a wish where it's like, oh, I want him to be back and whole and the way that he was and everything. It's basically he kind of, he would have returned as a monster, horribly disfigured, not human, no soul, Frankenstein but worse type of a thing. Or Frankenstein's monster but worse type of a thing. And, she made the wish, and like the son almost comes back, but the father is able to, negate the wish. So there's, this give and take with the monkey's paw, and this wishing stone, this dream stone seems to be the same way. It will give you something, but it will take something precious in return. And for Minerva, for Barbara, it's her heart, it's her kindness. And we kind of, at this point, we haven't quite figured out what it took from Diana yet, but we know that it will take something from her. But it seems to be, it's harder for her to get this lock off. And in all honesty, that she starts losing her powers, her strength, her speed, her endurance, her her healing factor, her bulletproof factor type thing. She loses that stuff. She doesn't have that, and it's slowly draining away. And what ends up happening is, they find out, that Max Lord went to, it was Egypt, Cairo, and then, Diana's like, okay, well, we need a plane. And they go to, they're still going to the Smithsonian, and, Steve Trevor ends up seeing all of the rockets that go to the moon, and, like, the astronaut stuff, and he's just blown away by all this. It's like, in that time frame, from when the first movie ended, for when Steve died, flying a couple hundred miles was already a hard thing to do. Flying thousands of miles, hundreds of thousands, flying the moon, even harder and harder, even more, preposterous. But of course, in that time frame, Diana has watched as humanity and as technology has evolved and gone further and further. And she's like, well, I'm going to, catalog all of this. And what ends up happening is they end up stealing a plane. And in the course of stealing a plane, which of course Steve knows how to fly the plane, because the basic mechanics of flying a plane, for what he was familiar with, is the same as this plane. And he's just like so happy looking at this plane as they're getting into it. And my dad made the comment, and he was like, well, he is kind of typecast. And I'm like, because his other big role is, of course, playing Chris Pine's other big role for nerds is, of course, playing Kirk in, the Star Trek movies and the reboot movies. And I'm like, yeah, handsome and brave and likes to fly. I've seen him in other movies, of course. But he's been in romantic comedies, of course, and a few other movies, of course. I'm more familiar with being introduced to him way back in regards to being a Disney nerd. Way back, he's in Princess Diaries 2, Royal Engagement. He plays kind of like the rival for the throne that falls in love with, Princess Mia, with Anne Hathaway's character. And of course, Anne Hathaway then later, of course, ended up playing, Catwoman in, the third Batman movie for Christopher Nolan. So, yeah. You're going to end up becoming Catwoman, and you're going to end, for the prince guy, well, kind of prince, is going to end up becoming Steve Trevor. Julie Andrews is also in, Julie Andrews is an Aquaman. She plays the voice of like the Leviathan character, I think, from what I remember correctly. And I'm just like, okay, I'm good with all of this. But what ends up happening is, they get on the plane, and, they end up getting, of course, That was weird. Oh, well, that didn't go off, and that didn't go off. That's still on. Okay, that was weird. Okay, that was weird. Apparently, the DC gods are annoyed at me. Um, what did I do? But what ends up happening is, they get on the plane and they get detected, of course, because there's radar now. And Diana, she kind of like magically, enhances the plane and makes it invisible, of course, which is where it's a reference to, Wonder Woman's invisible jet, of course, from the comics and from the series. And they fly and they get to Egypt and everything. And Max Lord has beat them there, and he's talking to this uh, oil baron that's there, and he's like, well, I can make this, I can make your wish come true and everything, but it'll cost you, type of a thing. And he wishes, that the Lord wishes, or the this oil baron or whatever wishes, he seems to be of Egyptian descent, but I'm not 100% sure. I didn't quite catch the exact thing of, oh, he's this and this and this. But he like wishes, I wish for this land to be returned to my people, and for for all the infidels to be cast out and everything. And so it's Max Lord grants that wish, and then takes his security detail. And so it's causing problems, and it's starting to cause problems on a global scale, because this is messing with sovereignty of nations and countries and everything. And Diana and Steve have to deal with some of this, and they deal. There's this big giant tank fight. Well, tank fight slash Humvee. Well, it's not a Humvee, but big kind of battle on the roads and everything. And Diana gets hurt. She actually ends up getting hit in the shoulder, and is actually it's not healing. And she ends up she's kind of squished between jeeps at one point. Steve's trying to gets on this other jeep, and or jeep tank thing, and I don't know military terms. And so this whole big kind of action sequence on the road with the tanks and everything. And what ends up happening is Max Lord gets away, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna fly back to wherever, or go back to wherever. And Diana ends up, there's these kids that were in the road, and Diana, manages to save them. And she's actually losing her strength, and Steve is kind of like, well, what's going on? And they haven't quite figured out that the wish costs them something yet. They haven't quite figured that out yet. And they end up, then Diana calls Barbara, and Barbara's been like looking through records and everything. She's like, okay, well, I found everything about this stone. It's popped up here and here and here and here, but then like these places would then collapse, and then here and then here, and then like his last recorded record was like in like the Mayans, and like in like for like the Mayans in South America and Central America, that area. And they're like, okay, well, I found this guy, and he can give us some more information about it. Not very credibly, but he's the closest thing that I could find. And I got in a meeting with him tomorrow morning. And Diana's like, okay, well, we'll be there. And they get they get to this place. We see the change in Barbara. She goes from this kind of frumpy sweaters and such into more a little more revealing, but also just more confident type clothing, which is kind of a good progression of like showing that she's changing. And of course, one of the sequences that I didn't quite talk about this, but I should have, because I loved the sequence and it was just fun. When they steal the plane, it happens to be that it's the 4th of July. And so we see all these, the fireworks going off, all over Washington, D.C. There's fireworks going off. And Diana and Steve fly through the fireworks, which, I mean, why the frick not? I'm like, yeah, I'm perfectly fine with this. Yes, fly through the fireworks. Just hope none of them go inside of the plane. And like and they fly, and and Steve just does it like it's second nature to him to fly this plane. And Diana's just like, it's, if everything about this world, flying was always the thing that I could never quite understand. And he's like, it's just wind and air. It's easy. And, for him, it's like breathing. Flying is like breathing in regards to being in a plane. It's like, it's completely second nature of like, I can do this no matter what. Diana, it's just a harder thing to understand. And what ends up happening is, of course, then later on, that happened like when they first stole the plane. But then we, of course, now they meet with this guy who explains, he's got like this tome that's, written in like Aztec or Mayan or whatever it was. It was Mayan. And he's like, shows it to them. And Diana is, of course, able to translate it because it's, root language type thing. She can do that. And she like reads through it and she's like, well, it costs the people so much. It's like, we have, the only way to, to stop it is to, renounce your wish and destroy the stone. And, because it takes what's most precious to you. And and Steve's like, for you, that's your powers. Because, like, she's not healing. She's not, she's not 100% as strong as she was. She's not quite as fast. And so he's like, it took your powers from you in exchange for me. And, Barbara's already started to change, of course. She's, not just becoming more confident, she's also becoming colder and more self-obsessed. And, Diana explains it, well, there's this god of mischief or Duke of Destruction or whatever you want to refer to it as. And it made this thing as a way to toy with people. It would, it's like, well, I'll give you your wish, your desire, but in doing so, it will cost you this thing that means so much to you. In regards to Diana, it cost her powers. In regards to Minerva, it cost her heart. For, Max Lord, he wished to become the Dreamstone, and it costs him, it's costing him his humanity. It takes the thing that's most precious to you. And, it's that concept of, well, what are you willing to pay to have this wish granted? And, he keeps, making all these, getting people to make all these wishes and everything. And we find out the thing is they have to touch him in order for it to work. And he just, has people make these wishes and touch him and everything. And he's trying to find this way to get like a large amount of people to make wishes at the same time while he is quote unquote touching them. Not like he's just gonna like walk up to random people and start going, "Hi, can I grant your wish?" I would hope not. That would be very weird. But he's like, okay, well, let's, I need a way of doing this, and he's like, well, I need to get a hold of the president, and he's like, he like arranges or whatever, gets a way to have like a meeting with the president of the United States, and he just like walks right in, type of a thing. And Diana and Steve are following them, and he's just like, Steve is like, you have to find a way to, you have to give me up. You have to renounce your wish, because it's not my choice, it's your choice. It's like Steve can't just make himself go away. Diana has to renounce this wish. And they end up back at Diana's apartment, and she's trying to find out wherever Max Lord went and everything. And they end up finding, she has like this secret room that has like all these TV monitors that she uses to keep an eye on things all over the city and such, which is just funny. And what ends up happening is, Steve is like, look, there's this big thing wrapped in the corner, and he's like, what's that? And she's like, well, it's this ancient armor that was from this great Amazon warrior. And she's like, well, her name was Asteria, and she was our greatest warrior. When mankind enslaved the Amazons, my mother freed us. But someone had to stay behind to hold back the tide of man so that the others could escape to the Themyscira. My people gave all of their armor to make her one suit strong enough to take on the whole world. And Asteria sacrificed herself for a better day for others. So, it's kind of like the one sacrificing for the many, which is kind of a theme in hero stuff. This one person will sacrifice so much of their own happiness, their own joy, their own life in order to protect all these others. I've mentioned, I think I mentioned this in the Hercules video. I don't think that's up yet, but I mentioned this in the Hercules video where, you know, it was like Hercules did not become a true hero. You know, he saved all these people and everything from all these monsters and natural disasters and everything, but it wasn't like he actually was getting, you know, like he would have been killed in that case. And the thing that made him a real hero was he was willing to, you know, sacrifice himself in order to save Meg. And and you know, and that's of course what happens in, you know, the Hercules video, which ties back into Greek mythology, which of course ties back into Themyscira and everything. Although Hercules in the uh, DC universe is not a nice person, if I remember correctly. Yeah, no, Hercules in the DC universe is not a nice person. But of course, during the, you know, the Asteria bit where Diana's explaining about that, we get, you know, like this kind of flashback bit where we see this, you know, this woman wrapped in this gold armor fighting against these, you know, these hordes of men, and, you know, taking all the hits and everything, to allow the rest of the Amazons to escape. And she is, you know, she's their big hero and everything. And what ends up happening is, you know, Steve and Diana, you know, they get to the White House and everything, and you know, Max Lord is talking to, you know, the president, and he was like, you know, I need you to make these certain wishes and everything, or, you know, I need to make, you know, Russia, and, you know, this is during the Cold War and everything, so of course Russia and you know, the United States, you know, they got a lot of, you know, nukes pointed at each other, which is never a good idea. And, you know, he's like, well, or the president's like, well, the only thing to do is wish for war, you know, more nuclear, you know, things closer to our enemies and like all this other stuff. And like that starts happening, you know, all these nukes start popping up and they're pointed at Russia, and so Russia's pointing their nukes at them, and, you know, just like all this other stuff, and this, you know, concept of, you know, global war can break out, and, you know, nuclear war type of a thing. And, you know, and Max Lord takes like the president's authority and this, you know, this respect that he demands and everything, and takes that, and he sees like this satellite system that they're working on, and he's like, what's this? And he's like, well, it can be used to like override any, you know, satellite system, you know, anywhere in the world. And, you know, it's in case we need to make like an emergency type of broadcast or something like that. And he's like, take me to that. And, you know, so that's where they're, you know, that's where he's going to get, you know, that's where he's going to go. But, you know, in the, you know, at the White House, they end up running into, of course, Diana and Steve. And, you know, then this is when, you know, Barbara shows up, and she and Diana start fighting. And she's, you know, using Diana's, of course, strength and everything, because now she has these skills that Diana had. And, you know, they're fighting and fighting and fighting, and Diana's taking more and more damage, where Minerva is not, where Barbara is not. And what ends up happening is, of course, Barbara's like, you made your wish, you have him, you know, points at Steve, you got your pilot back. What's wrong? You know, you do this. What's, you know, you've had beauty and power and grace and strength and everything your entire life. Why can't you let someone else have that too? Why can't you, you know, let me have this? Why can't you just leave Max Lord alone and let him do what he wishes in regards to what he wishes, in regards to this, in regards to what he wants to do? And, you know, and this is kind of when it starts hitting Diana of, I have to do something, because she's taken a lot of damage. She's taken a lot of, you know, she's got hit, she's bleeding, she wasn't able to deflect the gunfire, she's not as fast as she was. You know, it's not, you know, she's not the way that she was, you know, that she has been. And, you know, Steve kind of had Max Lord kind of, you know, pinned to the wall and everything, if, you know, if Barbara hadn't shown up. And, you know, so they end up dealing with that, but, you know, Max Lord escapes, and then Barbara goes with him on, you know, Marine One, and, you know, so they're off on the plane, helicopter thing, whatever, to get to where this giant satellite is. And Diana and Steve get out of the White House, and like there's just like chaos everywhere. You know, so many people making, you know, that had grabbed from him, you know, that, you know, he'd been randomly grabbing and making them make wishes, and of course, you know, there's this whole nuclear thing going on, and it's just like everybody's freaking out, which I don't blame them. There's lots of people that you see like they've pulled out, you know, like the rosaries and such like that. If you know rosaries, like Catholic people have rosaries, or other, you know, other religions have like the beads and everything that you hold on to when you're praying and everything, and they have those. And, you know, there's lots of people praying, and there's lots of people that are, you know, stealing things, and there's lots of people causing problems. There's people trying to help. You know, that's, you know, it's, you know, very much chaos that's going on. And Steve and Diana get to I would say a quiet place, but a slightly, less, visible place. And he's like, you have to do this. You have to renounce your wish. You have to give me up in order to protect this, in order to stop this, in order to stop Max and stop Barbara. You have to give me up. And Diana's just like, I can't. All I ever wanted was you. All I've wanted these, past, 70 years or whatever was you, was to have you back. And he's like, but I'm already dead. I'm already gone. And, and she, he's like, you've got all this other stuff here, this amazing world that you can live in. And I'm so happy that I got to see it. And I'm so happy to see that you're okay. And that you lived, and, that you survived. And now you actually have to go and live more. You have to go and find someone else that you can be in love with. What about this guy, the guy whose body he's inhabiting, find him, maybe find someone like him, that type of a thing. And, and Diana just, she does it. She gives him one more kiss, goodbye, and she goes off. And, she walks away, and she's like, I renounce it. I renounce my wish. I give it back. And of course, then she starts running, and her wounds start healing. And she gets back to her apartment. And then we see, she like jumps at one point and just like, flings herself through the air with her lasso. And she figures out how to fly in all intents and purposes. Which in the comics, currently, I do believe Wonder Woman does have the ability to fly in the comics, currently. I don't know if that's 100% thing she's been able to do, extremely, before the New 52, but at least in the New 52, she is able to fly at various points. I also know that she was in a relationship with Superman at one point, but I prefer Superman and Lois Lane, and I prefer her and Steve Trevor. That's where I fall on those. Batman's a little harder to come across sometimes, although I am slightly okay. I mean, like, I'll do like a DC video at some point where I talk about like different DC couples, but we'll just go back to this for now. But what ends up happening is, of course, Diana goes back to her apartment, and she gets the armor, the Asteria armor. And she goes and, she makes her way to where the satellite is. And of course, Max Lord kind of gave Barbara more power and everything. I'm feeling generous. What would you like? Type of a thing. She's like, I don't want to be like anybody else anymore. I want to be my own. I want to be better. I want to be stronger, type of a thing. And what ends up happening is, Diana shows up, and, Max Lord has, he's broadcasting his, his message to the world, all over the world. It's like, make your wishes, make whatever you, wish this, wish that, wish for it. And what ends up happening is, there's people making wishes, oh, I wish I was famous, or, oh, I wish I had this, or I wish you would drop dead, or I wish you would go away, I wish you would do this, I wish you would do that, and everything. And so it's, we get all these repercussions of these wishes going on. And it's, it's the worse and worse and everything. And Max Lord is just like taking different things from people. It's like, oh, you want that? I'll take this. You want that? I'll take this. I'll take this. I'll take your strength. I'll take your health. Because his health, we saw his health keep deteriorating throughout the course of the movie up to this point. Once he made the wish, his health goes downhill. And we see his son is, looking into these screens, and he's like, Daddy, I just want you. I just want you back. I just want to spend time with you. I don't care about anything else. I just want my dad. And and it's just, Max Lord is just, he's going crazy with power. And, Diana arrives, and then we get the whole big battle between her and Cheetah, which is a rather good battle. I'll give him that. There's lots of electrical wires and everything, and, circuits and everything that are all over the place outside. And I do like the design that they gave, Kristen Wiig as Cheetah. I think that they did a rather good job with that. And so they're battling and everything, and At one point, I would have loved it if this line was in there. I don't know where this line came from. I don't know if I heard it somewhere else, and I just think that it would be funny in this context. But what ends up happening is Diana, like I just thought it would have been funny if like at some point like well Diana and Cheetah are fighting because Diana is now wearing the golden armor and everything, fighting against Cheetah, you know, taking hits, but Cheetah's also extremely strong in this case. And so we all that moment in there. The battle is great, but I love this moment where it's just like I wish that this line would have been in the movie at some point where it's like Diana is fighting Cheetah and like Cheetah makes like I don't remember exactly what it is, but like Cheetah made like some comment, and then I thought it would have been funny if Diana went like I've been skinning things bigger than you since I was 5, type of a thing would have been a very good and rather adept statement in regards to probably things Diana had to deal with on Themyscira. Um, and such. And I just thought that that would have been like a funny line to have in there. I don't know, maybe there had been something like that in there at some point, or maybe that was in a comic I read in regards to that. I don't know, but I just thought it would have been a funny line. And so they end up they battle and everything, and Diana keeps trying to get Minerva to renounce her wish. Renounce this, renounce your wish. Give up this and go back to what you were. Take your humanity back and everything. And Barbara does not, and Diana kind of gives her one last choice, and of course Diana is kind of immune to electricity, and she ends up basically um, electrocuting Cheetah. She doesn't die; she's still alive, but she's extremely hurt from the electricity. And then Diana makes her way into the broadcast area where there's nobody else there except for Max Lord at this point in time because everybody else ran away, I guess. And there's like this huge amount of like wind whipping around the broadcast area where he's like broadcasting from, and she's trying to get close and everything to try to stop him, and she knocks off the camera, so then he just goes into like this particle stream or whatever. I don't know exactly how they explained it, but he's like in that, and he's still getting people to make wishes and everything. And the nukes got fired and everything, so that's not good. um and Diana, we see Diana, talking to him, and she's like, you have to stop this. You have to, what, she does this whole big speech about, like, there's, whatever you're going through, there's someone out there that's worse off than you, and you just have to try to make your life better through doing the right thing, not the easy thing. You can't choose to do the easy thing just because it's there, because you don't want to have to do the hard thing to get to the hard thing or to get to the outcome. You know, going on, doing that and doing that type of a speech, and doing these wishes are wrong. This isn't real. It's costing you far more than you understand, type of a thing. And he's like, I don't even, Maxwell's like, I don't care what you're saying and everything. And she's like, I wasn't talking to you. And he looks down, and her lasso of truth has managed to wrap itself around his leg. And we see, all over the world, we see, the screens glowing gold with, Diana using the lasso of truth as a way to communicate with the world through him and to persuade everyone to renounce their wishes. And we see them, all renouncing their wishes, one by one. I renounce it, I take it back, I don't want this anymore. And like the president like renounces his wish of, oh, I want nuclear warheads closer to the enemy because that's a wonderful idea. And it's just like, and like the bomb, the nuclear warheads just vanish. Even the ones that were like midair just vanish. And like we see the massive like all of it going out, and people just renouncing these wishes all over the place, and things vanishing or going back to normal. The guy that wished to have his land returned and in exchange for his oil empire or whatever, he wishes for that to be undone, and then it gives back what had been there, and returns the people with what they need. And so there's lots of stuff that happens there. And then of course we get these other moments. Max Lord, he ends up focusing in on his son. He sees his son Alistair, and we get the flashbacks of Max Lord when he was growing up, and he had an abusive father, and he abused his mother and him, and he was, they were poor, and he was, very much ostracized. And, he wanted to, make this company as a way to make things better for him, to make things better for his son. And he just, it's like it's where he starts realizing that my son is far more important to me than whatever this power can give me. Being with my son, watching him grow up, being a parent is worth far more than whatever money and power that this stupid rock gave me. And he renounces his wish, and therefore that kind of, as a as a kind of chain effect, of course, renounces all the other wishes. And he renounces his wish, and we see Wonder Woman smile in the background, and she's like, "Go to your son." And he runs off and gets on the Marine One or whatever, and gets to where his son is. And he apologizes to his son. He's like, I'm sorry, I just, all my life I was nothing but a loser, nothing, blah 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 blah, just horrible stuff. I was a loser, I was wrong, I was a bad person. And he's like confessing this to his son. But you never have to worry about me not loving you. You never have to worry about me not wanting to be your father, type of a thing. And we get those moments. And we get that moment where it's like him reconciling with his son. And yeah, he's probably going to go to jail for what he did. I wouldn't be surprised about that. But Diana might maybe find a way to put in a good word in the right, whisper in the right ear or something like that. To maybe, still get it that he gets to see his son. I would not be surprised at all if Diana like finds a way to keep an eye on this kid as he grows up, to make sure that him and the father and the son are able to actually be around each other. That wouldn't surprise me in the slightest, but we don't get to see that. But that wouldn't surprise me if Diana, if Diana didn't do that, that would actually be very surprising. If she didn't at least try to make sure that this kid had a good life, after what just happened with him, that would be surprising. And and then of course we cut to sometime later. It seems to be around Christmas time because there's this big Christmas festival going on and there's snow. Diana runs into the guy that Steve had possessed, the guy that, body who Steve had possessed. And they talk, and, just this nice, this nice little exchange that they have. And, and then he goes off, and she seems to be trying to live more. We don't really get a hard ending on Cheetah. We see her, but when everybody is renouncing her wishes, but she doesn't seem to actually say that she renounces her wish. She does seem to have turned back more into her human form, but we don't see her like actually renounce the wish. So we'll see what happens with that. If it's like if they do like a Wonder Woman 3 or something like that, if they bring Cheetah back for that, or they do something else with that, I don't know. But what ends up happening is, of course, we cut to there's kind of a mid-credit scene, and it's at this, like, it seems to be more of like a spring festival that happens. And there's this poster for a banner falls, and like a column falls. And well, it's not like a column, it's like a pole falls, and this woman just like stops the pole from falling, from almost landing on this cart with this baby carriage. And she just puts the pole down because it didn't hurt anybody. And the mother of the baby runs up behind the woman. She goes, ma'am, thank you for saving my baby. And the woman turns around and looks at her. And of course, you're thinking, okay, it's either going to be Diana or it's going to be something else. And because it's still got, the long wavy-ish type hair. And she turns around, and it's, of course, Linda Carter, who, of course, played Wonder Woman back on the original TV series. She's also been in a whole bunch of other stuff as well. And if you've seen Sky High, which is, this Disney movie about, kids who are training to be superheroes. So, like, My Hero Academia before My Hero Academia. Where there's this school for heroes. She plays the principal in that. And she's just called Principal Powers. And at the end of the movie, they make a joke. She makes a joke where it's just like, I can only do so much. I'm not Wonder Woman, as she like walks off or something. And as a kid, you don't understand that joke. And my dad had to explain it to me when I was a kid when I first watched Sky High. And I'm like, oh, okay. And like now it's just even funnier if I watch it. But she like stopped the pole and she saved the baby, and the woman's thanking her for saving the baby. And she's like, well, what's your name? And the woman goes, Asteria. And the mother of the baby was like, that's a beautiful name. She was like, how did you do that? With the pole and everything. And she's like, oh, it's easy. It's just, like the shift in weight, you just shift the weight of the object or something like that. It's very easy. I've been doing it for years, for, a long time now. And it's supposed to be stating that like Asteria has been living among humans, among humanity for the past several 100,000 years, or, 100 years, 1,000 years, whatever. Since the Amazons fled the Themyscira, she had her armor and she survived that battle, against, against men to allow the Amazons to escape. And then, she hid the armor somewhere, and Diana had managed to find the armor at some point, and she's now been living among humans for, insert amount of time, which is kind of cool. So we get that moment and everything, which is just kind of nice. I'm assuming that might also be setting up for, it's just like a moment where they have like, oh no, Linda Carter is here and we'll have her pop up here to play, this and everything. And that's funny. But we'll also see what happens later on. And of course, now we just go into, the cast list. We have Gal Gadot, of course, as, Diana Prince, Princess Diana, Wonder Woman. Lily Espel reprised her role as young Diana. We have Chris Pine as Steve Trevor, of course, and Christopher Pulhaloha, probably mispronounced that, plays the guy who's, Steve replaces, who's, body swaps with her. So, and he popped up and I'm like, wait a second, I know him. He's been in a lot of, he's mostly just been in like a large number of like romantic comedies and mysteries and stuff like that from like, Hallmark and everything, which my mom really likes those. And I've seen a couple of them. And I mean, I'll give him he is cute. We of course have Kristen Wiig as, Barbara Minerva / Cheetah. We have Pedro Pascal as, Max Lord Renzano, who is of course, he was in Game of Thrones. He's, of course, the Mandalorian in The Mandalorian. So we get those moments, which is just kind of fun. And then, of course, we have Robin Wright, who, of course, plays Antiope, who is Hippolyta's sister, Diana's aunt, the general of the Amazons. She died in the beginning of the first movie, right before Diana, left to go on her journey with Steve Trevor. And then, of course, we have Connie Nacellin, who is Hippolyta, Diana's mother. Of course, we had Linda Carter, of course, make her cameo as Asteria. And there's a few other ones that make, cameos in the movie. I think like her own husband, Gal Gadot's own husband, and their daughters make, appearances in the movie somewhere. There's, a whole bunch of other ones, like people from the original movie came back to just dress up in like, with old makeup and clothes and everything to, be like, we got older versions of themselves and everything for like photos. So we get those moments, which I like those like little authentic things that they throw in there. Cameos are perfectly fine in my opinion. It's just, I enjoyed the movie. I will say this, I know that there was like some controversy that was of course in it with the whole, the body swapping thing and things to do with like consent, in regards to that. And then of course stuff to do with, kind of making, the guy in Egypt, the Middle Eastern guy there seemed to be more like a villain type of a thing. I'm not really going to comment on that because I don't know 100% about where to put that stuff. I mean, if you're on the side of it's not a good idea, then, that's up to you. My main thing about it is, I guess my kind of main problem with the movie is, I did like the movie, but my main problem with the movie is you have it where, Diana has, she left her home. She already gave up her home. She gave up the Themyscira in the original movie to go and try to stop this war, try to stop World War One. It was, World War at that point in time, to help Steve and try to stop this war and everything. And she does, and in the process, she makes these new friends, but it also costs the first man that she ever loved, the first person outside of her mother and her aunt and her people that she ever loved. And it, and she's, it cost her that. She saved the world, but it cost her Steve. And I mean, like, he sacrificed himself he sacrificed himself. So it's not like she had to, like, be like, oh, save world, protect Steve. It was he sacrificed himself, but she still lost him. And, and it's just that moment where it's, she gets him back, and, like, you want her to be able to keep him. I mean, like, maybe find a way to make it that he's not, like, in possession of someone else's body type of a thing. That whole, clause in the contract. Your father is freaking Zeus. How about you go and find him and say, Dad, I want my boyfriend back. But it's my main problem with that is that it's like you have to make this decision of, okay, you can become a hero, and yeah, you guys save the world, you can protect people, you have these great powers, this great equipment, this magic or whatever, but you kind of have to be lonely for the rest of your life. It's, you have to keep, in Diana's case, she's kind of immortal. She keeps losing people. She lost Steve, not to, like, old age, but she still lost him. And then the rest of the people that were, like, their friends from the first movie, they're kind of gone. I know that in, like, in the, in the cinematic, universe for that, later on she meets, Batman and Superman and Aquaman and Flash and all that stuff. And I still have yet to see either Dawn of Justice, which I don't particularly want to see, or the Justice League movie. I've seen the Aquaman movie. I've seen Suicide Squad. I like Suicide Squad. I've seen the, Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn, which I very much liked. I saw the original Wonder Woman one that they did. As I said, I saw the Aquaman one with Jason Momoa. But it's like this whole thing of, like, oh, Aquaman kind of got his happy ending. He got his mom back. He still got his dad. He got a girlfriend. He saved his people. He got a happy ending. Superman, I know that in Dawn of Justice he died, and then in Justice League he came back, but I don't 100% know how, because he's Superman. So reasons, because, in the comics that's happened before, where he died and then he came back. But, like, he gets Lois Lane, and then, of course, Batman just kind of chooses to be isolated, in all honesty. But, Diana already gave up her home. She can't go back to Themyscira. She can't go back to her mother and her people in this continuity of it. In some continuities of it in the comics, she can go back, but not in this continuity. She can't. And yet, they're still like, okay, well, you have to lose Steve, and then you still have to give him up again. And, yeah, I get that she has to learn how to live in this world and maybe find new love, but it's just like, you want to try to not make it such a gut punch in the fact of, she got back the one thing that she wanted. She's been doing everything she can to help humanity, to keep an eye on humanity, to keep it safe, to protect the world. And then, of course, when she gets this one moment of happiness, she has to give it up. That's more my problem with that. It's like, okay, you want to give her the ability to actually be happy, have it be that, like, her, like, in, like, if they do this in Wonder Woman 3, like, if they do a Wonder Woman 3, and, it's just like, well, we have to find a way to bring Chris Pine back again. So, like, can we let her keep him this time? Can he actually stay around so they can actually be happy together? Type of a thing. Something along those lines, without it having to be that he's possessing someone else. Can we just have it be that she, like, finds her father, finds Zeus, and is like, okay, Dad, I've been doing what you wanted. I beat Ares before, and, I've been protecting the world, and I've sacrificed a lot. Can I please have my boyfriend back? And, have him have his own body, so we're not, like, robbing someone of their life type of a thing. I would prefer that. I mean, like, that's just my big problem with that. It's like you keep taking that away from her. You gave Aquaman a happy ending. Why can't you give Wonder Woman a happy ending too? You know, and I kind of say the same thing about some of the Marvel characters to a degree in that sense, where it's just like, you got some of them give happy endings, and then you got other ones that get their happy ending ripped away from them, and then you get other ones, and I get that being a hero is not a happy thing to a degree. I mean, like, you show this in, My Hero Academia is a very good example of this. Izuku currently in the comics is off on his own. Yeah, he's got Hawks and Best Jeanist and Endeavor kind of helping him, and then he's got All Might there and everything. But, we also see, I did that whole video about, heroes that have died. Midnight and Loud Cloud and, Water Hose and like all the other ones that had died. And, they left someone behind. Midnight left all of her students behind. Loud Cloud had Eraserhead and Midnight and, Present Mic that he had left behind. And, so we get those moments and everything. But it's still, they glorify being a hero, but then there's also that pain. And it's just like, okay, can you at least give her something? Can you give her something? That's not, oh, she met the guy that happened to have been the guy that Steve had taken over for his body. And, she met him. Maybe they'll end up being happy together. Maybe not. She still seems rather isolated from the rest of the world by the time by the time the dawn of justice rolled around and the Justice League movie itself rolled around. But, can you maybe give her the ability to have a happy ending where she actually gets to be with the guy? That's just my answer. Okay. Went a bit longer than I anticipated because I ranted a little bit in there. Sorry. I did like the movie. Not as much as the original, but I did like it. So that's what we got there. I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed me rambling about a movie that's been out for 5-6 months now or something like that I finally got the ability to watch. And we'll see what happens with some other movies. So that's what I have. I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. And just be careful what you wish for, and don't pick up any weird rocks and then make wishes on them and then be worried when, your strength disappears or something else happens. Just be cautious about that. And don't touch any monkey paws unless they're still attached to the monkey. And even then, just be very careful because monkeys. So even though I'm born in the year of the monkey. Okay, bye. Her name was Asteria. She was our greatest warrior. When mankind enslaved the Amazons, my mother freed us. But someone had to stay behind to hold back the tide of men so the others could escape to Themyscira. My people gave up all their armor to make her one suit strong enough to take on the whole world. And Asteria sacrificed herself for a better day for others.